Hello, my name is George Anderson. I'm from Webroot. I'm their Senior Product Marketing Manager on Enterprise Products.
So George, you've launched a brand new study at Infosec 2013.
Yes, we
Tell
have.
us all about it.
Well, we've been doing lots of research with our customers, both around web and with mobile. And one of the interesting things we want to look at, some of our earlier research, especially with remote users on the web, have pointed to the fact that people were more exposed and getting more breaks and security compromises with remote users. So we wanted to find out if the same applied with mobile. And in fact, we found precisely the same thing with mobile. In fact, that if you've got lots of mobile users, your chance of getting breached and infected are a lot higher than somebody with less. And particularly as it gets over about 25% of your staff.
So from the results of the study, what have you identified as the sort of main drains and the main risks associated with it?
I think one of the things that came out really strongest of all was that 90% of the people we surveyed said, they had a challenge in actually managing the devices in the first place. So I think, the main risk in some ways is just getting people to have the tools to actually manage the device and secure the devices in the first place. And there are lots of this around. There's different ways of doing it. People obviously think of using mobile device management, if you like, but that's sort of like even another level. I think if people just think basically about securing the device in the first place, stopping malware getting on there, protecting the asset in case it gets lost or stolen, so you're able to wipe it and do things like that. That's sufficient enough to get you started, and that's quite an easy. That's an easy thing for people to do, but they maybe don't realize it's that easy. They think they've got to take on something really large and complex, which is actually quite straightforward.
Were there any surprises from the study?
I think the surprises was the fact that people found that management so complex, that they were so worried about the challenge of that. Obviously, I think people are still also to and fro about things about personal data versus corporate data, and separating the two. But I think that's sort of, again, that's the next level thing. I think you want to think about just securing the device. So I think people were they were sort of a bit overawed by the thing. I think it was too much. I think maybe people have overcomplicated what's required. It's just another endpoint. It's just another thing like your laptop or your desktop PC.
What should businesses consider then if they are looking to look at this research and take away the main messages from it? What are the first things they should consider?
I think do something, because that's, in the end, I think we can all be a bit apathetic about this, but I think it's do something on a number of levels. I think you've got to decide, okay, if this is a personally owned device, if it's going to access corporate assets and have access to those sort of things, you then want to be able to secure that device, and there's got to be security running on that device, and you've got to, as part of policy, actually insist that that happens. It's not a question of, oh yes, this guy's walked in with a new Android phone, I'm just going to let him connect to the network. You've got to take responsibilities to do something about it. It's not complex. Just need the fact you need a policy in place. You need to think about what you want to allow happening on those devices, and you want to make sure they're secured, and you want to have some way of actually enforcing that as well as it goes along and managing it from a central point of view.
Well, it stood out to me just looking at this survey here and the sort of key points from it that web-borne attacks were more severe with companies with mobile users. The majority of companies have mobile users now, so it really is something everyone needs to be considering.
It's essential, and the web is sort of the web is the part of that. I mean, it's people going to phishing sites. We just actually launched a new anti-phishing service to recognize phishing sites a lot earlier, because actually some other web research we showed that actually 50-odd% of breaches, which is actually not in this report, where in a web research did 55% or so of the breaches were actually caused by the web. That's how they're getting infected. So and that was through phishing. So phishing attacks really high up. So things that all should sort of protect your web portal, your web browsing, you're using the browser and stopping phishing attacks, very key too. So it's all integrated. It's all part of the same thing about being able to protect those endpoints adequately and having enough layers in place to do that.
Have businesses been quick enough to jump on this? Do you think? Have they been quick enough to react?
I don't know if I blame businesses or I blame my own industry here. To be frank, I think the takeoff of smart devices, full stop, happened at such a phenomenal pace. And we think, just 2 years ago, there was, probably back at Apple One then, and now you look at a market where, smartphones dominate. You've got Android sort of roaring away at the moment, taking, almost 50% market share. Apple still going very strong too. It's a slightly different environment. that had just happened so fast. I think the security team was quite slow to actually react to the fact that these devices were coming in. They tended to come in as well with senior executives. So they brought their tablets in and said, I want my tablet to connect to this network so I can do work, because I can do work on this device too. And because they were high up and there were senior people, they said, okay, we'll do that. And so it sort of bypassed the normal sort of control. So I think that happened on one level, and I think the security industry itself was sort of slow to see that this convergence was going to happen. So we were slow to get technology in place too. So those two things together almost created a little perfect storm for a while. I think now most people have woken up to the fact and are actually starting to, doing things about it. And in fact, the survey again did show that people weren't, most of the people were intending to put things in place. There's very few people saying they were doing nothing, and most of them were either doing something this year, had done something last year, or even putting it into the following year's budget. So it's very current.
Taking into account that rapid pace of change and then looking at some of the trends from your report here that you've announced at Infosec 2013, can you make any predictions for the future in the next 1 to 2 years of how the threats are going to develop?
I think the predictions are it can only get worse. Android attacks have constantly risen. I mean, we talk about thousands of percents now over 2 years, and the growth of that will continue to do it. As more and more valuable data starts to exist on those devices, the cyber criminals look at more and more ways of actually making those devices make money for them, whether it's stealing the data on them, whether it's making them phone special numbers to make money, whatever the attack and the angle happens to be. So the prediction, I suppose, in that sense, it will only get worse. So, you better to do something now about it. I think technically the products have matured rather rapidly as well. So in fact, there's lots of good solutions out there, and you can, Webroot obviously ones, but other vendors too. So you can go and get things and actually start protecting those devices rather rapidly. I think the more compliant your organization is, so if you're in government or maybe financial services or pharmaceuticals or highly regulated industries, you'll probably need to go past the security level and go to mobile device management, because then there's more of there's a compliance, there's regulatory things sort of say that you have to do that as well. I think for most small businesses that's not necessary, just securing the devices and having some policy and monitoring it and managing it a little bit will be enough.
Well, for those businesses that do want to read your study in a little bit more detail, where can they access it?
They can access us on our website, so just go to www.webroot.com, go into any of our resources section there, and the white paper will be there, and you'll be able to find it there. And it's not a heavy read.